I'm up. I'm up. Oh. 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 Okay. Hey there, Echo community. How's it going? Welcome to another edition of Echo Online. It's Wednesday. Super happy to be awake and here with all of you wonderful people. And thanks again, Lauren, for leading us in that time of worship. I was totally awake for all of that. Some of you might be wondering why I was just asleep, and it's because this week at Echo, we're going to be focusing on rest, the idea of rest. Last week, we got to talk about gratitude and why that is so important and crucial for us to hone in on. Part of the reason I thought it would be good for us to talk about rest is because we're sort of forced into this place of rest. This is sort of like an unwelcome rest that we've all entered into that we didn't really sign up for. And I've been hearing from lots of you that you're feeling restless. I've heard that from a number of you that you're feeling restless, like you're having a hard time resting. We are people that like to stay busy. We like to fill our schedules with lots of things, life-giving things, because it gives us a feeling of worth. We tend to derive our worth from staying busy. Many of us like to keep busy when we're facing difficult things in our lives because it helps us to take our mind off of those tough things, and staying busy can be a distraction for us. And so now we have more time on our hands to think about the difficult things that we're facing in our lives, and we're feeling less worth or worthless in some cases because we don't have those meaningful activities that we're used to. We're running out of things to do. We're getting bored. And so why talk about rest when it feels like that's all we're doing is just sitting around resting and waiting for this whole situation to end. And again, I want to search for those answers in the Bible. In order to talk about rest, I think we need to talk about the concept of Sabbath or Shabbat. The first place we see a Sabbath rest, or the seventh day rest, as some call it, is in the creation story. God's creating the whole universe. Then on the seventh day, God rests and just enjoys this thing that he's created, this good thing that he's created. God actually is the one doing this. And so if God is doing it, you know this is important. And the next time we see this idea of Sabbath come up is God is asking the Israelites in the wilderness after they've escaped from Egypt or been delivered from Egypt. God asks them to observe the Sabbath. And so here's what that looked like for them. God was giving them manna, this bread material or manna to eat. It was daily bread. But God only gave it to them 6 days a week. On the seventh day, God asked them to not go out and collect food for themselves and to trust that the food that God provided for them on the sixth day would be enough for them on the sixth day and the seventh day. This was an incredibly tricky thing for them to do, a tough thing for them to follow, because think about it. If you were out in the wilderness, if you were out on a camping trip in the woods that wasn't going to end for the foreseeable future, you would be really concerned about having enough food. You'd be concerned about your safety and well-being and having enough food. And so this really goes against our natural survival instincts, this idea of Sabbath. Yet God asks them and asks us to stop and to pause and to rest and to trust. Rest and trust. Rest and trust. These ideas of rest and trust are interconnected, and it makes sense if you think about it. How can we rest if we don't have trust? It's not really possible. I think the only way to rest if you don't have trust is if you're completely exhausted and you have no other choice. But think about in any other scenario, if we're going to rest, if you're going to fall asleep somewhere, you have to trust that you're going to be safe and that you're taken care of and that you can actually let your guard down and rest. I think about a time when I was on a trip and all my friends were pulling pranks on each other in the night. I had a really hard time sleeping while I was on that trip because I was constantly worried that someone was going to be trying to pull a prank on me while I was asleep. And so I was kind of staying awake all night. And then contrast that with this image, this picture we get in the Bible of Jesus falling asleep on a boat during a storm with his disciples. And here's what the text says. This is from Matthew 8. His disciples woke him saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." They were freaked out because there's this nasty storm and they're on a boat, scary situation, and Jesus is asleep. And so Jesus wakes up and replies, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" And then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves. It was completely calm. And I like to think that directly after that, Jesus was like, "All right, I'm going back to bed, deuces," and then just rolled back over and pulled the covers over his head. How was Jesus able to do that? How was he able to sleep during a storm on a boat? Maybe he was just a heavy sleeper and could sleep through a lot of different crazy situations. My guess is he was able to rest. He was able to sleep in that circumstance because he had complete trust that he was taken care of. He had complete trust in God to care for him through that storm. This is the example that Jesus sets for us. Rest can look lots of different ways. There are restful activities that we can choose. Going for a walk outside. Maybe it's just taking a break from social media and getting off of your computer and off of your screens for a second. To just listen, spend some time in worship, spend some time in prayer, just be silent. Rest is something that we can choose. We run around most of the week, much like God's people did in the wilderness, trying to gather and collect security for ourselves and to get things to meet our most basic needs. And those are all good things to work for. Sabbath is meant to disrupt our weekly rhythms, to just kind of cut through all of that, to remind us of a few things. We are more than what we do. You are not a machine. We are meant for more than just work, for more than just what we can produce and do. Sabbath and resting is a way to remember that truth. It also reminds us that our provision and our very lives come not from our work and the things that we do, but those things come from God. This virus and the impact that it has on our world is showing us how little control we have. And that can feel really scary at times. But maybe this unwelcome season of rest that we're all in, maybe it's an opportunity for us to remember that our worth comes from God and our provision comes from God. And because of that, all of our trust can be placed in God. We can rest even in this storm. And so I just want to close with this beautiful verse. Jesus invites us to follow him and find true rest, the true rest that only Jesus can offer. Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened. Are you feeling weary? Are you feeling burdened right now? Jesus invites you to come to him, to follow him, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. Take my yoke upon you is kind of like follow me, follow my ways, and learn from me, and you will find rest for your very souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is the rest that Jesus offers all of us in this season. What a gift that is. Okay, guys, thank you again so much for joining us tonight. We miss all of you so much and can't wait for the day that we can all gather together in person again. So now as you go into your journey group time, I just pray that God will bless that time for all of you and help you to connect well and love each other well. And let God teach us about what rest really looks like. I pray that God would speak to each of you about how it is that you're supposed to be resting this next week and choosing rest for yourself. Bless you guys. we'll see you next time. I'm actually gonna just get back to it here myself. So deuces.